Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Easy Way Out podcast. My name is Tony Nash, and we are coming to you as always from the Armory in beautiful downtown Owasso, Michigan, home to my company, AZ Business Solutions, where we help grow your brand from A to Z. Now, I want to begin today's podcast by saying that COVID-19 is very real. It's highly contagious, and people have died from it. I also want to say that my 11-year-old daughter got it back in April. My 19-year-old daughter just had it back in July, and most recently, my wife and I have had it. And the good news is we were all sick for a few days, but we have fully recovered and feel good. We're fortunate. We're young and generally healthy. But not everybody is so lucky. But the point of the podcast today is not to convince you to think like me about COVID-19. It's no one should really tell you how to think. You should think for yourself. It's not to tell you whether or not you should self-quarantine or whether you should close or open your business, not to tell you whether you should socially distance yourself or stay away from your loved ones. Certainly not here to tell you whether you should or shouldn't wear a mask. These are all decisions that you should make for yourself as a free person. But today we are being bombarded with so much information and certainly a lot of misinformation. And if you're like me, it leaves you with a lot of questions. Who do I believe? What do I believe? Etc. So what is the answer to all of these questions that all of us have? Everyone you talk to has these questions. Well, I believe the answer is very simple. The answer is the truth. People, we need to hear the truth. It is certain that the media is infatuated with sensational headlines and provocative descriptors to try to get people to watch their news story or listen or to read the story. They call it clickbait. But the fact is that good news just doesn't get clicks. People don't want to hear good news. It doesn't get views. It doesn't sell papers. Have you noticed that any time right now there's any sort of semblance of good news, that people kind of come out of the woodwork. They come out of everywhere to try to discredit that good news and prove why that can't be right. It's almost like we've become a fatalist society who's programmed to only accept the worst case scenario. Now, we've heard a lot lately about hydroxychloroquine. I don't know if hydroxychloroquine works. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical expert. But I do know that when I heard about it, that there was possibly a cure, it gave me a glimmer of hope. I got a little bit excited. Now, certainly I want it to be proven, but you heard a lot of medical experts say that this has worked on hundreds of patients. It made me think that this might be the thing that allows my business to go back to normal, that allows my kids to go back to school normally, that it maybe would allow them to play sports this school year, something we really look forward to. Maybe I can go around my parents a little bit more. But lo and behold, the next day or within the same day, every single media outlet, every keyboard warrior, every social media platform, they start coming out of the woodwork not only to discredit these doctors and their message and who they are and their credentials, but they completely scrubbed them from the internet within 24 hours. I mean, completely got rid of it, where you couldn't even find these stories in a Google search. Now, why is that? Why would the media work so hard to discredit what could be good information? Why would we try so hard to discredit what may be a help? I don't know the answer to that question. But what I do know, as I said earlier, is that the answer to all of this is the truth. And I do believe that we are not being told the truth about COVID-19. What I'm about to share with you, it's not my opinion, because again, I'm not a doctor or any kind of medical expert. I've never practiced medicine, and I really don't even have a college degree. But I do, however, have a great deal of common sense about this whole thing, and something about it just hasn't smelled right from the beginning. If you listen to your heart, you know that that's true. Something about this whole thing just hasn't seemed right. The things that I'm about to share with you, it's public information. You all have access to this information if you can get to the internet. I only used the CDC, the World Health Organization, and Worldometers as my sources for these statistics. So here's some truth for you today. As of today, as of right now, most recently reported, 164,000 people have died with COVID in the United States. There have been just over 5 million confirmed cases. Now, those are big numbers. When you hear that, like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of people. 164,000 people have died. 5 million people have got it. that makes you think, wow, this is really serious. And that's what we hear every single day. That's what the media tells us all the time, around the clock, 24/7, about all these new cases and all these new deaths. These are big numbers. Now, I'm not going to get into the inaccuracy of the test, which some experts say are as much as 50% unreliable. My daughter, who was tested for it, tested negatively first, and then they asked to retest her. I've had people who have told me that they went to get 2 different tests at 2 different places, and one tested positive, one tested negative. If you're from Michigan, you've heard in the media that Matthew Stafford tested positive for coronavirus, and then 2 days later found out that it was a false positive. And so I don't know how accurate they are. I'm not going to get into how we've all heard the stories of COVID deaths being reported that were inaccurate, such as people dying in a car accident, but they had COVID in their system, so it was counted as a COVID death, or people that died of a heart attack but also had COVID in their system being reported as deaths that contribute to those numbers. We're not even going to talk about that. I'm not going to elaborate on the fact that 40% of all of the coronavirus deaths in the United States have come from 5 states. And one thing that all 5 of those states have in common is that all of them put their COVID patients in nursing home, which is with our most vulnerable citizens. I'm just going to use the large numbers, these big numbers that the media tells us every day. We're just going to assume that every single one of these numbers are accurate. So right now, 164,000 deaths with COVID, 5.15 million cases. So if you do some math here, if you take the number of deaths, 164,000 deaths, and you divide it by 5.15 million cases, that means 0.03 of people that get it have passed. So that means that COVID has a 97% recovery rate, which is pretty good. That's right on par with the flu. 97% recovery rate. The average age of death of COVID is 80 plus. Now that's pretty good because the life expectancy in the United States is 78. So that tells us that it's mostly affecting people that are already in the last days of their lives. Now, again, I'm not trying to diminish even one death. One death is a tragedy. And I'm not trying to make it seem like dying from COVID is not a real possibility, because it absolutely is. But the numbers just don't seem right. Now, let's look at this. 5.15 million cases. If you divide 5, now when you hear it, there's 5 million people that have gotten coronavirus. You hear that, that's a big number. But when you divide that by 328 million people, which is our population in the United States, that means that 0.015% of all people in the United States will just get COVID or will test positive. Now, we know that there's a huge percentage of people that have tested positive that never got symptoms, that were asymptomatic, as they call it. But that means only 1.5% of all people in the United States have even contracted COVID, according to our tests. And we are doing far more testing than any country in the United States. So we're actually looking for active cases. We're not just testing sick people, we're testing everybody. Now, if you take 164,000 deaths, which again seems like a lot, but you divide that by 328 million people, that means that, listen to this, 0.0005% of people in the United States have died of coronavirus. 0.0005%. That's crazy. That means less than 5 out of every 10,000 people. Now, when you hear that, that seems, well, that's not so bad. Now, again, one death is bad, but when you hear, that doesn't make you super afraid to go out of your house. That doesn't make you afraid to go around people. Now, certainly those who are most vulnerable, certainly those people who are immunocompromised and that are have weakened immune systems, all of those things, certainly they should be very cautious because it's been proven to be lethal in many cases for those people. But when you hear that, you think, wow, this is really not that widespread. Only 1.5% of people get it. Less than 0.0005% of people die from it. That's pretty good odds. If somebody told you tomorrow that if you left your house, you would have a 0.0005% chance of dying, would you leave your house? That's for you to decide. I'm not here to convince you whether you should or shouldn't. But why doesn't the media report this? Why do they only tell us about cases and deaths? This makes it very difficult to trust the experts. Not one doctor, think about this, and if you've heard something, you tell me wrong, but not one of the experts on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, the Facebook people, the Dr. Fauci's, the experts, not one of them has said anything about how to boost your immune system. Over the last 6 months, they haven't been talking about how to boost your immune system. They only preach stay home, disinfect everything around you, avoid contact, avoid parks and gyms, Close the health food stores. Wear a mask. A vaccine is coming. This is what you hear. And all of these things are proven to weaken your immune system. But this is what the experts are telling us. Not one thing about taking vitamins, eating healthier, eating the right kind of food, getting out in the sunshine, getting some exercise. Why are we not hearing about these things? If the health experts are really experts, why aren't they telling us what we can do to combat this other than just do all these things to quarantine ourselves and to really, in the end, weaken our immune system? It appears like, to me, the game is rigged. So maybe you're one that say, well, listen, we had to do this because we didn't want to overrun the hospitals. Okay, we didn't want to overrun the hospitals. They couldn't handle millions and millions of people getting it. We all heard that at the beginning, and I think at the beginning we were all willing to do that, right? That's why when they said take 2 weeks off, everybody stay home, close the businesses, I think everybody was willing to do that for 2 weeks. But I've heard some of you who are listening that know me, that I've talked to about this. At the beginning you said, hey, listen, it's just 2 weeks. And then you said, hey, we're going to just close the business for 30 days. It's just the month of April. And then you said, it's just stay out of church for this long, or then it's just wear a mask, or it's just avoid your loved ones. And now recently I've heard some of you say about school, it's just a year. It's not going to hurt kids to sit out for just a year. And my question is, at what point you say it's just enough? I don't know. Again, I'm not here to answer your questions. But this whole thing started with that, but yet we saw that the hospitals were never overrun. So why now? The hospitals certainly aren't overrun now. Many of the hospitals are empty. Many of the hospitals have laid off majorities of their employees and have closed floors. Why are we still locked down? It started with slow the spread. Then it went to flatten the curve. Then it moved to prevent the second wave. And at this point, it's like a tragedy if you even get the virus. They don't even want anyone to get it. When in history have we ever been able to prevent everybody in society from catching a virus? It's never going to happen. Are we waiting for complete eradication of the virus? Because we know that's not going to happen either. So what's going on here? Let's look at these numbers. You can find these right on the CDC website. Did you know that last year 647,000 people died of heart disease? 647,000. That's 1,772 people every day. That's 74 every hour. That means that during this podcast that you've been listening, 12 people have died from heart disease. Now imagine for me for 1 second, imagine that if the media reported every day, around the clock, every news cycle, every time someone died of heart disease, and they had graphs and charts and they had experts coming on talking about the dangers of heart disease and what things cause heart disease. And then you went on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok, and everybody's reporting about how dangerous heart disease is and how you got to be careful about what you eat, and you got to get exercise, and you got to eat right, and you got to go do these things because heart disease is a real killer. What about if your local news and your media outlets, your county health department reported that, hey, today 47 people in your county died of heart disease? People that are close to you, and we started hearing these numbers all the time. Do you think it would cause the way we think about heart disease to be a little different? Do you suppose we would stop doing some of the things that we know that are proven to cause heart disease, like eating at McDonald's? Man, those French fries are delicious, but we know they cause heart disease. We know that not exercising, and we know that drinking soda and all the other types of things that we put into our bodies, we know they're proven to take time off our life, and yet we still do it. And the media doesn't warn us about that. They don't tell us about the cases day in and day out around the clock. But what would change if they did? Get this, 599,000 people died of cancer. That's 1,600 people every day. That was last year. In 2019, 169,936 people died from accidents or unintentional injuries like car accidents, bike accidents. That's 466 people every day. Imagine if they reported today 466 people died of car accidents. Tomorrow, 466 people died of car accidents. Would you not start to be wary to ride in your car, to get on a bike, to be around people? It would make us afraid of each other. Have you noticed people being afraid of you lately? Not wanting to get close to you, not wanting to be around you? You're going to give them the plague, right? 160,000 people died of chronic lower respiratory disease. That's like pneumonia, bronchitis, etc. 146,000 people died of stroke. 121,000 people died of Alzheimer's. 83,000 people died of diabetes. 55,672 died with the flu. That's 153 people every single day. 44,972 people died of suicide. Now that number is drastically up in 2020. Look it up. People are dying of suicide a lot more. But that's 123 every day. Why doesn't the media tell you about these numbers? Something's not going on. Something right isn't going on here. Now, why do I pick those deaths? Because every single one of those deaths that I just gave you are things that would require people to go to the hospital. Now, if we were worried that the hospitals were going to be overrun, those things right there account for about 2 million deaths every year. That's 5,500 deaths every single day that the hospitals are already managing. Now, that's not people that just went to the hospital. That's people that went to the hospital and died. That doesn't account for everyone that went to the hospital and survived, had treatment for a couple days. That doesn't include people that went to the hospital to have a baby or for the emergency room. None of these are just things that cause people to die, and our hospital systems weren't overrun, but yet they couldn't handle 160,000 deaths. Now, maybe they thought it was going to be way higher. It was going to be millions. That's what the experts were predicting. Okay, but then why now? Why are we still locked down today? What are we so afraid of today when we have all these numbers at our disposal? Think about this. Last year, 480,000 people died from smoking. That's 3 times more than coronavirus. That's 1,300 people every day die from smoking. Again, I'll go back to the illustration of imagine if they reported that every single day. Today, 1,300 people died from smoking. If your local county health department, your friends on social media, the local media outlets reported today, this many people died in your community. Today, 53 people died in your county from smoking. But yet, they still sell cigarettes. It says right on the side of the pack, this is going to give you cancer. You probably will die, and people still do it. Why, if these experts are so concerned about public health, why are they still allowed to buy these things that are killing 480,000 people a year? 300,000 people last year died of obesity. Now, this is one of mine. I am that guy. I'm clinically obese. 300,000 people died of it. Now, why doesn't the media talk about that, about eating right and around the clock? 88,000 people died of alcohol-related deaths. 70,000 people died of drug-related deaths. 11,000 people died from drunk drivers. Now, you hear these numbers and you think, man, these are as bad or almost as bad or some kind of cases worse than coronavirus, but why are they not reporting them? These are all things that you can legally do. You can eat whatever you want. You can smoke what you want. You can drink what you want. People are dying from it, and yet it's still allowed. How about this one? 460,000 children go up missing every single year. In the United States. That's just in the United States. 460,000 missing children. That's 1,260 missing kids every day. Now, why doesn't the media talk about that? Matter of fact, out of all the numbers I looked up, that was the hardest one to find. That was the hardest one to find the information. They want to hide that information from you. Now, if the media reported around the clock how many kids came up missing, we would be afraid to let our kids out of our sight. We wouldn't let them go outside and play. We wouldn't even let them in our backyard. We'd have them right by our side in the grocery store and everywhere we went. But the media is not reporting those numbers. 460,000 kids every year. Now get this one. This is the last one I'm going to give you. But last year and every year in the U.S., right around 650,000 abortions are performed every year in the United States. 1,781 unborn babies killed every single day in the United States, making that one of the leading causes of death in the United States. So why do I have a hard time when these public health experts go on and talk to me about the sanctity of life when they endorse and fight for the ability for our country to murder 650,000 unborn babies every single year? Why do I find it so hard to trust them? Because they really never cared about the sanctity of life. They really never cared about my health, or they would have stopped selling me cigarettes and fast food. Why are they not telling you this? What's going on? Why is a pandemic being made into a political fiasco? That's for you to answer. Now, I have my opinions, of course. Those who know me closely know I'm an opinionated guy, and if you want to talk about those things, I would love to have a face-to-face conversation with you, because to me, those are the types of conversations that you should have face-to-face with people. But I'm not here today to change your thinking like mine. I'm just getting you the truth and allowing you to ask these questions for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Now, the Bible tells us in John 8:32, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." I told you earlier that the answer to all of this was the truth, but not just the truth about the numbers or the media. There's a lot more to it than that. I want to tell you the truth about life. The reason I don't live in fear of the virus is not because I don't believe it's real. It's number one, because the Bible says that God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. That means that fear does not come from God. So I fight fear. It doesn't mean that I'm never afraid, but when I am, I go to the Lord. I don't live my life in fear. but also because I have hope. You see, my hope is in the Lord. My hope is not in whether we're going to get another stimulus check, or whether or not my favorite restaurant's going to go back to serving the things that I used to love or go back to normal, or whether my business is ever going to go back to normal, or when my state's going to start to reopen things, or if my kids are going to go back to school normally, or if my governor is acting or not acting like a tyrant, as people like to say. It's not even who gets elected in November. You see, and it's certainly not in a vaccine. My hope is in the Lord. John 14:6, Jesus said unto them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. You see, if you're still listening today, and I hope you are, the answer is the truth. And Jesus is the truth. The only hope for America is Jesus. The only hope for you is Jesus. I hope that you will take that to heart and understand. Now, maybe you have no clue what I'm talking about. What do you mean, Jesus? I was with you until that point. If you'd like to talk more about that, I would love to have that conversation with you. I could show you from the Bible where it shows that Jesus is the way and the truth and that he died for you. And if you want to have a conversation with me about any of this stuff, about that, you can message me on Facebook, Tony Nash. You can DM me on Instagram, azee.insta. Or you can send me an email to my personal email, my business email, tony@azbiz.com. But you've been given the truth today. The truth that the media won't tell you. So the question is, what will you do with that truth? What do you think about that? Albert Einstein said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them do evil without doing anything about it. What will you do today? I hope that you'll do something. I want to thank you for watching. As my mother always said, you can't and never could until you tried. So go out there and try something great, my friends, and don't take the easy way out. We'll see you next time.